Check this out. Some folks have been calling out certain martial arts, saying they're not realistic or effective in street combat. We've seen a lot of different videos, podcasts, articles, and things like that. We've seen things with MMA fighters taking on traditional martial artists. And the whole thing is, they're saying that traditional martial arts are just not effective in today's society. This isn't a new phenomenon. This has been going on for years. I remember when I was a kid, during the height of the Bruce Lee craze in the early 70s, when we would hear about some local tough guy who took out some local karate instructor and things like that. I bet you even Gichin Funakoshi, Masoyama, Ip Man, and all those guys, I bet you back in their time, they used to hear the same things. I have to be honest. Looking at those videos and reading these articles, at one point I honestly thought that this street combat sensibility had more to do with culture than with actual martial practicality. You see, growing up in New York City, I've known a number of traditional martial artists, trained in traditional martial arts all the way through, and these guys would beat the schnuggies out of you. I'm talking about, well, I have to include my teachers, Kuksanam Yam Kinam, Chungkwantanam Kitayam, but I'm also including men like Professor Moses Powell, Victor Moore, Joe Louis, Bobby Dreeben. All these guys trained in traditional martial arts, and these guys are quite capable of handling themselves on the street. Now, what they did on the streets may not be as pretty, or whatever as you would see in the movies or in the dojang or the dojo, but it was effective and it worked. And also, a number of these guys had jobs that made them utilize this traditional martial art training. These guys a lot of them were police officers, a lot of them were bouncers, bodyguards, or personal escorts. I even have to include myself in this category because, for a while I had to work as a bouncer. I didn't like it, but I had to work as a bouncer in a gentleman's club. And I also did some personal escort and some bodyguard work. And yeah, there were times where I had to use my training and had to use my abilities to get the job done. Some time ago, I saw a friend of mine who was an Aikido practitioner. He was working as a bouncer at the South Street Seaport. Well, I saw him take out this idiot, and he was a traditional Aikido man. Now, I will admit, the movements and the things he did resembled more Wally J in a small circle than it did look like those big, wide movements that you might see, in the Ueshiba videos and things like that. But the point of the matter is, he was an Aikido man, and he took care of his business to this point. When I was about 18 or 19 years old or so, I had an incident down in the basketball court. And yeah, I kicked the hell out of that guy. I even kicked him in his face. Now, again, I was 18, 19 years old. I had a lot better flexibility. This was before my hip surgery and things like that. But again, I'm trained in Kwon Do, a traditional martial art. Also to this point, years later, I was in the New York City subway. I don't remember if I was on the 2 train or the 5. I know it was somewhere around between 135th Street and 149th Street, Grand Concourse, somewhere around there. But in any case, there was a problem. Got into a fight. And no, I didn't use a lot of roundhouse kicks and spinning kicks and things like that. No, it was a lot of small, tight techniques. In fact, honestly, my elbows and my knees did most of my fighting. Though there was one point I did kick that guy in his personal space. Made the point. Well, like I said, most of the people that I knew back in the day lived and worked in the Bronx, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, as time went on, and let's talk about the 80s, after the Karate Kid movie, more and more martial arts schools opened up. And I started seeing more and more people and meeting more and more folks from outside the New York City area. And I was even meeting a lot of folks that were opening up their schools, and they were opening up big schools. Now, let's get this one thing straight. Back in the 80s, when somebody said they had a big school, they might have had 100 students or so. That was considered a big school back then. But in any case, they had students, and these guys were quite knowledgeable. They could break down their forms, they could break down their katas, they did wonderful, wonderful demonstrations. But unfortunately, they had never been in an actual fight. Now, again, like I said, these masters, their techniques were crisp and sharp, but they were also teaching things like, defense against wrist grabs and things like that, and saying that you could do this in a fight. And it was working in the dojang and in the dojos and what have you. But honestly, we all know, if you've ever been in a fight, you know it is not that easy to grab somebody's wrist. People don't stand still. People don't stand straight up and just throw a punch at you. They tend to be moving. You got to alter your techniques so that you can be able to do things. And you can tell that person, that master, unfortunately, had never been in a real fight. Because if they had, it alters your thought processes. One thing is impact. When you block a punch, you feel it. When you block somebody's arm, you will feel it. When you strike somebody bare knuckle, you're going to feel it. Hell, you look at some of the Jackie Chan movies. When Jackie Chan punches somebody in the face, yeah, he always does something like this, shakes out his hands, because you feel it. I'm telling you, you're going to feel it. Mike Tyson, I think this quote is attributed to Mike Tyson when he said, everybody has a plan and everybody is a fighter until they get hit. Well, trust me, when you get that first hit, when you get that punch, when you feel that impact, it will change your religion. You are going to feel it. Having said that, this will alter your training. You will still do traditional training, but you may make some slight changes. And keep in mind, there's also some traditional training where you will feel impact. There is training where you do go body to body and flesh to flesh. One thing to keep in mind, and this, especially in this day and age, is what is the mindset of the school? What is the marketing of the school? What are the students in that school to do? There are a lot of students who still go to the schools where their main focus, their main emphasis is on personal combat, personal self-defense. And in those schools, yeah, I recommend you do some body-to-body, flesh-to-flesh. You do a little bit of impact training. Now, I'm not saying that you have to go full out and have hardcore, full contact training every class. No, I'm not advocating that. If that's what you want to do, go right ahead. But you will have to feel, what is it like to take the punch? You will have to feel what it's like to block or deflect something. You will have to know how to move around, okay? Then you have the other schools where their emphasis is not on so much self-defense, their emphasis is on well-being, health, fitness, harmonizing their mind, body, and spirit. Not that that won't happen in the first set of schools where you're going for self-defense. Yeah, take the self-defense classes, learn how to defend yourself, and then you start to feel more confident, and then you start to focus on other things like social atmosphere, harmonizing mind, body, spirit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there are some schools where, because of maybe where they live, maybe the area, the marketing of the school, personal street combat is not the main emphasis of the school. Well, that's fine. But that's the choice of the master. That is not the art. I believe it's the training, and it's not the art that may be ineffectual or ineffective. It's the master. It's the person who's teaching the art. What is their training? What are they laying down and setting forth and passing on to their students? And let's get real, let's be honest. In this day and age, some of these masters' credentials and some of what they do, that may be fake as well. But that's subject for another time, okay? Well, that's it for now. Until next time.